was 16 when I first realized just how fragile I was, even within the family I thought I could trust. My name's Emma, and growing up, I always thought our home was a place of unconditional love. A place where the unspoken rules held us together, where family was a frame that held the picture steady. My dad, Robert, the pillar of strength. My mom, Susan, the gentle hand that smoothed over everything. And my older brother, Ryan, the golden child. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, just like a magazine cover. But beneath the surface, something was slowly cracking, and I wasn't ready for the night it all shattered. Life in our house always seemed like a performance. My father, Robert, was a star, a man of discipline and towering opinions. He believed in perfection and control and in demanding the best from all of us. His booming voice echoed through every room, making sure we knew what was expected. The family rules were simple, unspoken, but clear work. Hard never fail, and above all, maintain the image of success. I always tried to follow those rules to fit into the picture my father had painted of us. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. My mom, Susan, was different. She didn't speak as loudly, but she carried her own quiet power. Where Robert ruled with an iron fist, Susan was the soft, calming presence that held everything together. Or at least, that's what she seemed to do. She was the one who made sure the cracks in our perfect little family didn't show. She was the one who told me everything would be fine, that it wasn't worth the fight. But somewhere, deep down, I knew that silence wasn't peace. It was just fear. Then there was Ryan, my older brother. He was everything my father wanted to see in a son: charming, confident, and always ready with a story that could make even the most absurd situation sound believable. Ryan had mastered the art of manipulation early on. He could twist anything to his advantage, whether it was getting out of trouble or earning my father's praise. He was the golden child destined for greatness in my father's eyes. I used to be close to Ryan back when we'd hide in the attic and create worlds together, our imaginations, the only thing that mattered. But somewhere along the way, Ryan discovered that charm was currency, and I became just another shadow in his world. I was 16, the quiet one, the artist. I wasn't interested in playing by the same rules as everyone else. I spent my time in my room sketching, dreaming, trying to make sense of the world that didn't seem to understand me. I never wanted to make waves, never wanted to rock the boat. I thought if I just kept my head down and stayed out of trouble, I'd be fine. But being the quiet one made me an easy target, a perfect canvas for blame. The breaking point came on a night that began just like any other. My dad had just returned home, his presence filling the air with tension. I'd just gotten home from school, dropped my art portfolio in my room, and was heading to the kitchen when I heard it. My father's voice, bellowing from the living room, tearing through the silence. "Emma, get in here now." My stomach turned cold. I hadn't done anything. Or had I? I tried to remember what I could have possibly done wrong had I forgotten something. Left my paints out. I couldn't think of a single thing. But it didn't matter. Whatever it was, I was already in trouble. I walked in my heart, hammering in my chest. My dad was standing there, fists clenched, face turning red with rage. Ryan was sitting on the sofa looking down at the floor, the picture of innocence. And there on the hardwood lay my dad's prized Community Leadership Award, the glass eagle shattered into 1,000 pieces. "You think I'm an idiot?" my dad snarled. "Ryan told me everything. You knocked this over and just walked away." My throat went dry. What that didn't make sense. I hadn't even been near it, but I didn't get the chance to explain. Ryan, ever the actor, kept his eyes glued to the floor, playing the role of the reluctant bystander. My father, his voice shaking with fury, was already convinced. You slammed your bag down, didn't even care. You're always so reckless. I stared at Ryan, pleading with my eyes. I didn't do it, I tried to say, but the words wouldn't come out. I watched as he shifted uncomfortably on the couch, refusing to meet my gaze. He was playing me like a puppet. My dad turned to me, his face inches from mine. Don't you dare lie to me, he barked. You're always lost in your little world, never paying attention. I just stood there, paralyzed by the unfairness of it all. My own father was looking at me like I was a liar, a troublemaker, someone who would destroy everything they worked for without a second thought. I tried to speak, my voice trembling, but nothing I said could change his mind. I swear I didn't do it. I said the words, barely a whisper, but he didn't hear me. Of course you did, he shouted. It's always your fault, always. That night, as I sat in my room, the silence pressed down on me like a weight. I stared at my own reflection in the dark window, wondering if I had somehow done it and just forgotten. Had I really been that careless? Was I just that bad? It wasn't just about the trophy. That moment wasn't the only time something had gone wrong, and I was blamed for it. The dents in the car door, the missing $20 from my mom's purse, the forgotten promises, each incident had been another piece of the puzzle that painted me as the reckless, irresponsible one. And Ryan, he never had to answer for anything. He could lie, manipulate, and always walk away clean. I wasn't just the scapegoat. I was the one who was always wrong, always guilty even when I hadn't done a thing. And the worst part was I started to believe it. I started to think that maybe, just maybe, I deserved the blame. That maybe I wasn't as good as Ryan, and maybe I was always the problem. That night with the glass eagle marked the beginning of a painful pattern I would come to know all too well. Every time something went wrong, I was the first one blamed. Even the smallest of things. I remember once when a dent appeared in the side of the car door. It was barely noticeable, but when my dad saw it, his fury was instant. He demanded to know who had done it, his voice rising, shaking the very walls of the house. Ryan, of course, had the perfect explanation. He'd been at a friend's house and some other kid had backed into the car. A careless accident, but not his fault. Dad believed him without question. I could see the way his eyes hardened when he turned to me as if I had done something to make the car get dented. My protests were met with a cold silence, and I was told to stop trying to make excuses. It didn't matter what I said. The blame always found its way to me. Then there was the time my mom's $20 bill went missing from her purse. It had been a slow morning, nothing out of the ordinary, but when she went to pay for groceries, she realized it was gone. It wasn't the amount that mattered, it was the accusation that came next. I wasn't even in the room when it happened, but somehow I became the prime suspect. I had been struggling with a few things, but I would never steal from my mom. I hadn't taken it, but Ryan. He had a story ready. He was quick to point out that I was always careless, always forgetting things, and now, somehow, I had forgotten the $20. He looked at me, his eyes filled with false concern as if he were a witness to my supposed slip-up. I tried to defend myself, tried to tell my mom that I hadn't taken it, but my words just seemed to fade into the background. She didn't say much. Just a soft sigh, her eyes full of worry, but not about the missing money. She always wanted peace. It wasn't worth the fight, she'd say. And in those moments, I felt invisible. Not seen, not heard. What hurt the most, though, was not the accusations or the lies Ryan told. It was my mother's silence. I began to understand that the truth didn't matter. What mattered was keeping the peace. And as long as I was the one blamed, the peace would always come at my expense. I wasn't a daughter, I was a scapegoat. Each time this happened, a little more of me chipped away. At first, I tried to hold on to who I was, but it wasn't long before I started questioning myself. Was I really that careless? Did I have a problem that no one else saw? Was I just an accident waiting to happen? These questions began to haunt me, and I found myself replaying every incident, wondering if I had done something wrong without even realizing it. Was I truly the cause of all the chaos, or had I simply been born into a family that needed someone to blame? I began to feel like I was walking on eggshells, always anticipating the next thing that would go wrong, knowing deep down that I'd be the one to take the fall. The emotional toll was starting to wear me down. I no longer felt like I could trust myself. If my own family didn't believe me, how could I? They made me doubt everything, my actions, my memories, even my own worth. I wasn't the daughter they wanted. I wasn't the golden child like Ryan. The worst part was how effortlessly Ryan lied. He had this way of spinning a tale so convincing, so carefully crafted, that even I began to question if maybe he was right. I started to wonder if I really had done something wrong, if my memory was faulty, if I had missed a detail here or there that could explain everything away. It was as if the truth was no longer relevant. What mattered was how well the lie fit into the story my father wanted to believe. And Ryan, always the performer, played the role of the innocent, wronged sibling flawlessly. But as time went on, I became more and more isolated. The weight of being the one who was always blamed for everything was suffocating. It wasn't just about the big things like the broken glass eagle or the missing money. It was the small, everyday moments too. The way I could never live up to my father's expectations, the way I was always too quiet, too introspective, too different from the image of perfection he had built. I couldn't be Ryan, who could charm his way out of anything. I couldn't be my father, who demanded perfection without ever showing love. I couldn't be my mother, who kept the family glued together with a soft smile and quiet surrender. And so, I became the scapegoat, the one who was always wrong even when I wasn't, the one who would always be blamed even when I hadn't done anything. It wasn't just the small things that hurt. It was a realization that my family had cast me into a role I had never asked for, a role that was easier for them to live with, even if it destroyed me. I was the fall guy, the one who would take the hit, so that the rest of them could continue pretending that everything was perfect. I remember the day it really hit me. I was sitting in my room, trying to sketch out a new idea for a piece I was working on, but my thoughts kept drifting. I kept hearing the echo of my father's voice in my mind, telling me I was careless, telling me I'd done something wrong, even when I hadn't. The weight of it all became too much. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape them. The lies, the silence, the constant feeling of being invisible yet never being able to disappear completely. I couldn't keep living like this. The emotional toll was too heavy, and I began to wonder how long it would take before I lost myself completely. Maybe I already had. Maybe I was already gone, buried beneath the weight of everyone else's stories about who I was. But one thing I knew for sure, I couldn't keep being the scapegoat. I couldn't keep being the villain in a story I never asked to be a part of. It wasn't the first time something had gone missing, but this time it felt different. Dad had left $400 in an envelope on his desk. Money he'd saved up for a deposit on a new company car. He'd made a point of telling everyone about it the night before, proud of the way things were falling into place. But the next morning it was gone. I had no idea where it was, and yet as soon as I walked downstairs, I knew something was wrong. Dad was pacing in the kitchen, his face a storm cloud. Mom was standing by the sink, her hands wringing with nervous energy. And Ryan was sitting at the table, the picture of concerned innocence. "Where is it, Dad?" demanded the second he saw me. His voice had that familiar edge to it, the one that made my heart race in my chest. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I froze my mind, scrambling for an answer I didn't have. "Where is what?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "The $400. He snapped, his face contorting in frustration. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what he was talking about, and I knew right away how this would play out. I had nothing to do with it. I hadn't even been in the office, but it didn't matter. Dad didn't wait for an explanation. He was already convinced that I was the one who'd taken it. "Don't play dumb with me," he growled. "That money's gone, and I know you were the last one in here." I took a step back, my chest tight, trying to find the right words. I had nothing to hide, nothing to explain. But the look on his face made it clear, no matter what I said, it wouldn't matter. Ryan was already setting the stage, and I was the villain. That's when Ryan spoke up, his voice dripping with false reluctance. "Dad, I didn't want to say anything, but I overheard Emma on the phone with Olivia last night. She was talking about that new camera lens she wanted, saying she was just a few hundred short." My heart skipped a beat, a cold wave of dread washing over me. It was the perfect lie, crafted so skillfully that even I felt a pang of doubt. I had been saving for that lens for months, but everyone knew that. What Ryan was saying didn't make any sense. "Ryan, that's not true." I stammered, my voice trembling. "I was saving for it, yes, but I didn't take your money." But Ryan didn't look at me, didn't flinch. His eyes stayed on the floor, his face the picture of reluctant concern. He was playing the perfect victim, and I was the one who'd fallen into the trap. "You think I'm stupid," Dad boomed, taking a step toward me. His breath was hot on my face, his anger palpable. "You think I wouldn't connect the dots? My money goes missing the same week you're suddenly close to buying a $500 piece of equipment. And now I'm supposed to believe you didn't take it." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. My father was so sure of his accusation, so certain that I was the one who'd taken the money. It didn't matter that I hadn't done it. It didn't matter that Ryan had lied. What mattered was that the narrative had already been set, and I had no place in it except as the culprit. "I didn't do it," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. But the more I spoke, the more it felt like I was sinking. The words, the truth just didn't matter anymore. The accusation had already taken root, and nothing I said would change the way they saw me. "Enough." My father's voice shattered my words, his anger rising higher. "I've had it with the lies, the carelessness, the disrespect. I'm done." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You are no longer welcome in this house," he spat. His voice was low now, almost cold, and I felt my world tilt. My heart pounded in my chest, the air in the room thick with tension. I wanted to say something to fight back, but the words wouldn't come. I was frozen, my body trapped in disbelief. I had never imagined that it would come to this, that my own father would throw me out like this. I looked at my mother, hoping, praying that she would step in, that she would stand up for me. But her eyes were downcast, her silence more painful than anything Dad had said. She wasn't even looking at me. And in that moment, I realized she had already chosen a side. I wasn't the daughter she was trying to protect. I wasn't the person she saw. Get out now. My father ordered his voice final. He didn't even look at me when he said it. He just turned away as if I were nothing more than a problem he needed to be rid of. My chest ached. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The weight of everything, the lies, the accusations, the years of being blamed, crashed down on me all at once. This was it. This was the end. I grabbed my school bag and my jacket, moving as if in a daze. I walked out of the house, the place I had grown up in, the place I had always called home. My heart felt empty, hollowed out. The world outside was still the same, but everything had changed. I walked down the street, not a single tear escaping my eyes. I felt numb, like everything I had ever known had been ripped away. The quiet humiliation of it all gnawed at me, but it was the absence of hope, the complete loss of my family that cut deepest. There was no going back. There was no place left for me there. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be abandoned, to have everything I thought I knew about love and family stripped away in a single moment. The first person I called was Olivia. She didn't ask questions, didn't judge me. She simply said, "Come over. Mom's making lasagna." It wasn't much, but it was enough. In that simple invitation, I found the first glimmer of safety I had felt in weeks. And as I walked toward her house, the weight of the past few days, the anger, the betrayal, the rejection began to lift, even if just a little. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to let go of everything that had held me down. It was the only way I could move forward. Leaving my family was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the first step toward finding myself. Olivia didn't ask questions when I called her. She didn't need to. She just told me to come over, and when I arrived, her mom was in the kitchen making lasagna like everything was normal. It was the simplest thing, but for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. I wasn't in that house anymore. I wasn't part of their story, their lies, their expectations. I was just Emma, and that was all I needed to be. Staying with Olivia wasn't permanent, but it gave me something I'd been missing: peace. I spent the next few days figuring out what I wanted to do. I couldn't keep living like I had been, waiting for something to change. I needed to build my own life, something that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval. That's when I decided I needed a job, something to ground me, to give me purpose. I walked up and down Main Street, filling out applications at every shop with a help wanted sign. Most places looked at me, a 16-year-old with no experience, and politely said no. I was starting to lose hope when I stumbled into a small coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. The air inside was warm and smelled like freshly ground coffee beans. Soft jazz played from a corner speaker, and the walls were decorated with local art. It felt like the kind of place where people actually lived, where things weren't perfect, but they were real. The woman behind the counter with streaks of silver in her curly hair looked up as I stepped in. She smiled and asked if she could help me. I handed her my hastily filled out application, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't expected much, just another no, another door that would shut in my face. But when she looked at the address I had left blank, she didn't ask why. Instead, she looked up at me, her eyes soft but steady. "You an artist?" she asked, glancing at the sketchbook poking out of my bag. It was a simple question, but it felt like the first time anyone had truly seen me for who I was. I nodded, my voice almost a whisper. I tried to be. Her name was Sharon, and as we talked, I realized she wasn't just a coffee shop owner. She was someone who understood what it felt like to be invisible, to be overlooked. She asked me about my art, what I liked to draw, and even listened to my dreams of going to art school. For the first time in ages, I felt heard. After a short conversation, she folded my application and set it on the counter. "Can you start Monday? I need someone to open up with me at 6 a.m. sharp." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming, like a weight lifting off my chest. "Yes," I said, the words slipping out before I could even think. "Yes, I can." That job at the daily grind became more than just a paycheck. It became my foundation. Every morning, I'd wake up before dawn, walk to the coffee shop, and spend the day learning the ropes of running a cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something to hold on to. And in the quiet moments while I wiped down counters or brewed lattes, I found my thoughts drifting back to my art. My sketchbook filled up quickly with new ideas, new inspiration, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was building something that was truly mine. Sharon became more than a boss. She became a mentor, a quiet guide in a world that had felt too loud for too long. When she looked over my shoulder at my drawings, she didn't just see sketches. She saw me, the person I had been before. Everything fell apart, and the person I was becoming. Her encouragement, simple as it was, gave me the strength to keep going, to keep building my life from the ground up. I was no longer defined by the broken family I'd left behind. I was Emma, the artist, the one who was finally learning to rely on herself. And with every latte I poured, with every line I sketched, I knew I was moving closer to the life I was meant to live. One afternoon, after a particularly hard day, I found myself sitting in the quiet corner of the coffee shop. My sketchbook open, but my mind elsewhere. Sharon noticed the weight I was carrying, the exhaustion I hadn't been able to shake off. She didn't ask me about it right away. She just poured me a cup of tea sitting across from me, waiting until I was ready to talk. When I finally did, the words spilled out in a rush about my family, about the lies, the blame, and how I felt like I was always the one to carry everything, even when I didn't deserve it. Sharon listened quietly, nodding with understanding. She didn't pity me. She didn't try to offer empty reassurances. Instead, she said something that stopped me cold. "What you're describing, Emma, is a classic narcissistic family system." The term was so simple, so clinical, but the weight of it hit me like a ton of bricks. She explained it calmly, the way someone who had seen it all before might. How in some families, roles are assigned to the children. One is the golden child, the other the scapegoat. Ryan in my family was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who was always praised, always adored. And I was the scapegoat, the one who took on the blame for everything, who was made to feel like I was the problem. Sharon's words turned everything I'd been feeling inside out. It wasn't about me. It wasn't because I was broken or flawed. It wasn't because I deserved the blame. It was because my family needed me to be the scapegoat so Ryan could stay the golden child. It was about the roles they needed to play, the stories they had created about themselves. I had never been allowed to be anything other than what they needed me to be. That moment marked a turning point. I began to understand that everything wasn't my fault, that the pain I'd felt for so long wasn't because of something I did, it was because of the family system I'd been trapped in. And with that realization, I felt something change in me. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the problem. I was just me, and I was finally free. One day, while I was helping Olivia research colleges, she pointed out a profile on a university forum. It was for Ryan's application, president of the student body captain of the debate team, and founder of a nonprofit called Youth for Tomorrow. My stomach twisted. Ryan had been bragging about that nonprofit for months, how it helped at-risk teens. My parents were so proud of him for it, but something didn't sit right. I didn't know why, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too perfect, too polished. I decided to look deeper. I searched Youth for Tomorrow on Google, hoping to find some verification, but there was nothing. No website, no articles, no registered charity number. I tried business registries, social media, even non-profit databases. Nothing. It was a complete fabrication, a lie that Ryan had built his entire perfect image around. My brother's golden child persona, his spotless reputation. It was all a house of cards. With this truth in my hands, I knew I couldn't let it go. I needed to expose him, expose everything, but I couldn't do it quietly. I had to make a statement, one that would make my family face the truth in front of everyone. The City Arts Gala, a prestigious event with a $10,000 grand prize, was coming up. My father would be there, of course, on the board of one of the corporate sponsors. It was the perfect stage. I poured everything I had into my piece, a triptych I called The Echo in the Frame. The first panel showed a shadowy figure crushed under the weight of a golden trophy. The second showed her being pushed out into a storm, and the third showed her standing tall, painting her own light onto a dark canvas. When I won the prize, I didn't just accept the money. I stood before my family and the crowd and made my truth clear. I held up the oversized check and said, "This money isn't for me. I'm donating it to the Downtown Youth Center, a real organization that does real work." The room erupted in applause, but my father's face turned purple with rage. That night, I confronted my family for the final time. It wasn't about the prize, it wasn't about the recognition, it was about authenticity, something they'd never understood. I wasn't playing the role they assigned to me anymore. I was telling my story. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. My family's perfect facade cracked wide open in front of a room full of people, and the consequences were immediate. An article in the local paper praised the powerful statement I made, but it also mentioned Ryan's nonprofit couldn't be verified. That was all it took. Within 2 weeks, his college acceptance was rescinded, and my father's business associates started to distance themselves from him. Public image, his greatest treasure, had been shattered by the truth I exposed. But for me, the real confrontation came later in the quiet hallway away from the crowd. My father's anger was palpable. His voice was low controlled, but his fury was unmistakable. "How dare you do this to us?" he seethed. "You humiliated us in front of everyone." I looked at him, no longer afraid, no longer willing to play the role he had cast me in. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourselves. You built your future on lies. I just exposed the truth." Ryan, his face pale, finally spoke. "You ruined everything. You could have just left it alone." I didn't mean for, but his words faltered. It didn't matter what he meant anymore. It was all out in the open, and no amount of excuses could change that. Then the final blow came from my mother. Standing there, tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "Emma, I knew." I didn't need her to say anymore. She knew about the missing money, about Ryan's lies. She had found the empty envelope in his trash can, but she had stayed silent. She had chosen to protect the lie over me. And in that moment, I knew for sure I wasn't just a scapegoat. I was nothing to them anymore. I can't do this, I said, my voice calm but firm. I won't be your villain, and I won't be your victim. I turned away, walking out of that place and out of their lives for good. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no angry words left unsaid. There was only peace and finally being free from a family that had never truly seen me. As I walked away, I felt light, unburdened. For the first time, I was walking toward my own future, ready to tell my own story. It's been a few months since I walked away from the life I once knew, and every day brings me closer to the person I'm meant to be. I found a small studio apartment above a flower shop just a few blocks from the coffee shop where I started over. It's simple, but it's mine. The sunlight pours in through the windows in the mornings, and I can finally breathe without feeling suffocated by the past. Art has been my way of reclaiming myself. Every sketch, every painting has helped me find my voice. Through my art, I've faced my fears, my anger, and my hope. I've built my life piece by piece, creating something real out of all the brokenness. I'm not the scapegoat anymore. I'm Emma, the artist, the creator, the one who gets to tell her own story. I've learned that independence isn't just about living alone. It's about owning your truth, your choices, your life. I'm no longer defined by the roles others tried to put me in. I'm the one who gets to decide who I am and what I want to become. And this journey, it's only just beginning. So, if you've been inspired by my story, by the idea that it's never too late to start over, I'd love for you to like and subscribe. Who knows? Maybe your own journey is just waiting for you to take the first step.